Hello, everyone. Welcome to the gaming on the next side of the comics, of course, Justin. Uh, bad week for Bungie, huh? News came in from Sony. They had a massive investors' earnings call, and a bunch of stuff was talked about. But let's be honest, whenever you hear Sony and Bungie together, your first thought is, okay, let's hear it. What did they say about Marathon and Destiny? And it's the first one who said what? The answer to Marathon is good things, maybe, and for Destiny, nothing, which I would arguably interpret as a very bad thing. As Cassie in his own article kind of wrote, headline, Sony backs Marathon even after 765 million in Bungie impairment losses, which if you're not aware of what an impairment loss is for, if you're not financially apt with your literature, that's fine. It's a whole cavalcade of nonsense, but I'll just translate for you. Basically, that means a company looked at something and they said, we once valued you at X,
Now we
but
don't.
now we don't. That is an irrecoverable or unforeseen loss on our part that we will probably never get back out of you from value-wise. So you are now worth, in this case, 175 or 765 million less than what we project you as. Now, basically, that translates to a write-off on their books that they can claim in tax recovery. So basically, that's a write-off for them. So if you hear impairment loss, just think tax write-off. That's basically what it is. And they wrote off 765 millions worth of tax write-off for Bungie, so not good. But let's just cut into the dark meat, right? So basically, the article mentions that Sony basically had their earnings call for March. And they talked about how a bunch of things. And the big highlight of the meeting was that, like I said, they wrote down Bungie from 700. They wrote down Bungie an extra 765 million, which is massive because if you remember, their original amount that they bought Bungie for was 3.6 billion, which again translates to in their books, Sony being or Bungie being valued at 3.6 billion. That means that they have already now lost 765 million of that on top of another 565 million that they've already written off in the past. So, yeah, they've already written off like $1 billion+ from the amount that they bought Sony for in terms of its value estimate, which isn't surprising for anyone who knows the whole deal that went down between Sony and Bungie back then. Like I say, they paid 3.6 billion for it, which was no way in hell overpriced. So there was going to be some level of write-off.
Yes.
So that's not entirely shocking. What is really interesting, however, is that Sony themselves are actually saying that they're wanting to keep backing Marathon despite everything that's going on. Now, there's a whole story revolving around Marathon. We've covered it in the past. You know how Sony basically, or Bungie, is creating or has created an extraction shooter. Pretty good extraction shooter, I would say. But I think I've covered on this show before, and I think many would agree that as good as Marathon is, it's nowhere going to be the amount of numbers that it can generate that anywhere near what Bungie needs to keep sustainable.
Mm-hmm. It was part of a market within gaming that no matter how hard you try, there's only a select number of people who will actually go and, pay for that.
Yeah. As many people would say about Marathon, it is a niche within a niche.
Mm-hmm.
Which again comes back to the whole odd part, which again Bungie am saying that player retention to Marathon is strong. This is what Bungie has formerly said, receiving a Metacritic score of 82 to 90. So overall, it's received as positive. However, they are still wanting to back the numbers and basically keep supporting it. Let me see if I can find you the actual quote that they uttered about what exactly they said in relation to it. I have like several articles pulled up here, so I have to scan through them. I really got to find a way to just highlight stuff on these things. Regardless, while I look for that, I will tell you though that regardless of how successful Marathon is, it was never, like we said, going to be the numbers that Sony wants. An article according to Polygon states that in the time of the article's publishing, which was only about like May 8th, so about a week ago, the numbers of Steam on for Marathon, which remind you, we do know for a fact is where like 70 to 80% of the players are, is hovering somewhere between 14 and 17k, or 4 and 7k. Not 14, 4 and 17k. So 4,000 and 17,000, which is not a lot. Especially compared to Destiny, which, if memory serves, is still doing better than that. And yet Sony wants to back the lesser of the two horses. I'm still trying to find the words they used. I really gotta highlight this stuff and make scripts in advance. This is definitely not a good moment. Ah, well. Regardless, and I cannot find the Dem quote. I will at least say that they are choosing to back the game, and they're wanting to try and make the market expand. So they want to try and make Marathon appeal to more people, and they want to try and drive player retention up. Which is again fine, but I would remind you that we've again mentioned that Marathon is a niche within a niche, which in this case would mean more casualification, if that's even a word for Marathon, which I don't even know if that would really work because again, Marathon bills itself on being extremely hardcore, and I don't know if casualifying it would really work in the grand scheme of things. You tear it in two different directions at once, which, eh. Which again, all of this has nothing to do with the fact that they didn't even mention Destiny at all during this earnings call, which is a big problem. Because again, technically, Destiny is still Bungie's flagship title, the thing that's been around for 11 plus years and is still making a decent sum of money, I'd like to think, even at its worst time. And there's a lot more ability to earn money from Destiny compared to Marathon. Yet the fact that Sony didn't even mention it in the earnings call and just kind of focused entirely on Marathon doesn't entirely bode well. While it does say that Marathon is willing, or Sony is willing to keep backing Marathon at least for a year going forward, so we'll at least see a good year of content coming out of Marathon. I mean, we already know what the next season's going to look like. It's going to include a night version of one of the maps, new enemies, presumably, new weapons, definitely, yada, yada, yada. A reset, which we'll see how that goes. All of that's well and dandy and all, but as far as Destiny's concerned, we were promised a roadmap and we still don't know nothing. We don't even know what's going to happen with the next expansion. Because remember, that technically was promised for, like, I think July or something? And we haven't heard anything about that yet, so that means it's probably either going to get delayed or we're going to have a weird situation where we're going to go straight into a expansion and then, or we're going to have a season episode thing, not sure what they're calling it anymore, and then an expansion like a few weeks after that, which I don't know if that's going to work. It's probably going to get delayed at this point, which again, the radio silence does not bode well for Bungie at this case, or bode well for Destiny, I should say, at this case. And it's really weird, like I said, that looking at all of the numbers that Bungie could make, or Sony could make, off of Destiny, they still choose to back the lesser horse in Marathon. Again, not to say that Marathon is a bad game, but again, as I kind of covered in the show already, it's good. It would be a massive success in a double A sphere, but a double A studio is not what made it. Bungie made it. You know, the Halo guys. And
Yeah,
the Destiny guys.
the Halo.
The Halo guys, as they love to tout. They got triple A margins they need to meet. And that's a lot more money that they're thus burning. Some people have even pointed out that, Bungie is like not able to support two of these games at once, despite having numbers way bigger than something like Warframe and DE, who can support both Warframe just fine and even cook Soulframe on the side with less employees. So maybe it's just mismanagement to hell and back, who knows. But the point is, as things stand, it almost feels like Sony is going to have to pick between Destiny and Marathon. And right now, they're eyeing up Marathon really hard for I don't even know what reason they could give, honestly. I mean, it's the new thing, and that's kind of it. I mean, maybe they think the reason is just franchise fatigue with Destiny, but again, I point out that game's been going for 11 years, and even on its worst days, it's still doing better than Marathon on its best, so I don't know. I don't know. So it's kind of a weird position to be in for Destiny right now, and definitely an odd position for well, I wouldn't say odd for Marathon. It's definitely looking like it's got some legs in it, but how exactly this will play out for Bungie, we do not know. We still have to apparently get an announcement for what's coming next in Bungie in the next few weeks, so expect that to happen, and we're definitely going to have to hear something from them at that point, hopefully. So we'll see. But yeah, that's kind of the show. Like I said, massive investors call from Sony, where they wrote off another 765 million from the 3.6 billion they bought Sony for or Bungie for, which again, like I said, was already overpriced. So that was inevitable that we're gonna have to start knocking that number down. But definitely not a good sign. And I don't know. You tell me, audience. Do you think Sony will make the good decision to allow Bungie to continue with Destiny, like
Yeah.
even despite everything with Marathon. Because again, as people like Tassie point out, they give 3 to 4 years for, some studios to make a single player game, but they refuse to give that kind of time for Bungie to make, I don't know, D3 or something. So at least I don't know. Will they? We'll see. They do that, so will they do this? We'll see.
We'll
Anyways,
see.
you tell me, audience.
A lot of money has been put into this, so you decide. Has this been well put or not?
This feels like one of them call voter channels. Call in and post your vote to see what
Call
Bungie get a
in.
future for Destiny.
Have they put their money where their mouths are?
1-800-999 for Destiny. 1-800-888 for Marathon. I don't know. Does anyone get that joke? Does anyone know that? No, just
Do
me. Okay,
you,
fine.
do you know? Do you know the game show?
Well, do you know how those old call-in vote systems used to work, or is that just me being an old guy? All right, fine, whatever. But anyways, that's the show. Like I said, not good news for Sony. Definitely not good news for Bungie, I guess, because like I said, they got a massive bit knocked off their total. And up in the air for Destiny. Like I said, I'm really holding my fingers. Cross your balls and pray to see what happens with Destiny, I guess. Like I said, it's the winning horse by all accounts, but that doesn't seem to be what Sony's talking about, which is really weird. Either they're saving some big announcement that they haven't said yet for Bungie to reveal, which is possible, or they genuinely don't think much of Destiny, which in that case, I think they're just a bunch of idiots. But hey, they're the same people who backed Concord and thought that would be a major success. So Sony and idiocy do seem to go hand in hand these days. Eh? But anyways, that's the show. Hope you all enjoyed. Have a good week. Have a good weekend. Unless you want to add anything in the end, Justin.
No, that's pretty much it.
Right then, we'll sign off then. Feel like I disregarded that. All right, we're done. Have a good week, everybody. Bye bye.
Have a good one.